A little girl spotted the police dog in the courthouse and spoke just 2 words that sent a shockwave through the entire room. The unexpected moment silenced even the most seasoned court officers, creating a scene no one would ever forget. What happened that day would forever change the lives of everyone present. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment on where you're watching from. The morning light streamed into the old São Vicente courthouse, casting long shadows that seemed to guard secrets within the dark, wood-paneled walls. The scent of old books and polished wood filled the air, creating a solemn atmosphere that could intimidate even an adult. 6-year-old Lena Oliveira walked in hand with her mother, Anna, clutching a worn-out stuffed dog named Pip, her inseparable companion since Max had disappeared. "Don't let go of my hand, sweetie," Anna whispered, smoothing her daughter's bangs as they walked down the central aisle. The little girl nodded, her brown eyes taking in every detail of the imposing environment. The wooden benches creaked softly under the weight of people awaiting their hearings, and the high ceiling amplified every whisper into a mysterious echo. They had only come to support Mrs. Marcia, their next-door neighbor, in a minor dispute over a dividing wall. Anna felt it was important to show solidarity, even if the setting was intimidating for Lena. "It will be quick," she had promised her daughter as they got ready that morning. They found empty seats in the third row. The little girl sat down, swinging her legs that barely touched the floor as she hugged Pip to her chest. The courthouse seemed even larger on the inside, with its colorful stained glass windows filtering the morning light into mesmerizing patterns on the marble floor. "Mommy, why does that man have a dog?" Lena asked, discreetly pointing to the opposite side of the room. Anna followed her daughter's gaze and saw Officer Carlos Silva in his impeccable military police uniform, posted near a side entrance. Beside him, an imposing German shepherd sat at attention, wearing the official vest of the K-9 unit. "That's a police dog, honey. He helps keep everyone safe," her mother explained in a low voice. But Lena was barely listening. Something about that animal stirred a restless feeling in her that she couldn't name. The way his ears twitched, the shape of his head, his posture. When her eyes met the police dog's, she felt her heart pound with an inexplicable familiarity. A sense of recognition washed over her small body, as if she were seeing something that had been lost long ago. The German shepherd, as if sensing the girl's stare, turned his head slightly in her direction. It was only for an instant, but it was enough for Lena to clutch Pip even tighter, as a distant memory began to surface in her mind. In the center of the courtroom, Axel remained motionless, a living statue. The German shepherd held a perfect posture, his black police vest embroidered with K-9 unit in white letters. His watchful eyes scanned the room with the discipline Officer Carlos Silva had instilled in him over months of rigorous training. To anyone else, he was just another police dog doing his duty, but not for Lena Oliveira. The 6-year-old girl felt something different the moment her eyes met the animal's. There was a familiar glint in his gaze, something that awakened buried memories of sunny afternoons in her backyard, of laughter and games of hide-and-seek. Clutching Pip to her chest, the little girl felt her heart race with a certainty her young mind couldn't quite explain. Anna noticed her daughter's restlessness and tried to keep her seated, but the connection between Lena and the dog seemed magnetic. "Stay still," her mother whispered, worried about her daughter's behavior in the formal setting of the court. Ignoring her mother's request, Lena gently pulled away and took 2 hesitant steps toward the animal. The German shepherd remained in position, as he had been trained to do for years. His eyes, however, locked onto the small figure approaching him, as if something about her stirred a dormant memory. A few feet away, Lena stopped. Her heart was beating so hard it felt like it would burst from her throat. With her fingers still gripping the stuffed dog, she took a deep breath and let out a nearly inaudible whisper. Max. It was as if time had frozen in the São Vicente courthouse. The dog, until then impassive, snapped his head toward the child's voice. His eyes widened, and in a move that stunned even Officer Silva, the animal broke formation. Ignoring years of disciplined training, Axel walked slowly toward Lena. His muzzle trembled slightly as he sniffed the air around the little girl. Then, in a gesture that left everyone present speechless, the imposing police dog simply lay down at the child's feet, as if paying homage to an old friend. His gaze, fixed on her, seemed to say that in that moment, the rest of the world had disappeared. Silence consumed the room as everyone witnessed the impossible happening before their very eyes. The silence that fell over the courtroom was palpable. Everyone, from the austere Judge Maria Costa to the quietest court clerk, stared open-mouthed at the incredible scene unfolding before them. The imposing German shepherd, trained to remain impassive in any situation, had broken every protocol to approach a child. Lena Oliveira, her heart racing, tried to pull her daughter away, fearing for her safety. "Lena, come here now," she whispered urgently, casting an apologetic look at Officer Carlos Silva, who seemed as stunned as everyone else. But the girl remained as if mesmerized, her eyes locked on the animals. There was something in that gaze, an invisible connection that seemed to transcend the time and place. Lena's small hands trembled slightly, but not from fear. "He recognized me, Mommy," she murmured, her voice thick with emotion. "He knows who I am." Officer Silva took a hesitant step toward them, torn between his duty to control his canine partner and his curiosity about what was happening. The tension in the room was almost suffocating. It was then that Lena, with slow, deliberate movements, reached into the pocket of her blue dress. Everyone watched in anticipation. The girl pulled out a small, metallic object that dangled gently, reflecting the light streaming through the courthouse's tall windows. "It's his tag," Lena explained, showing the time-worn medallion. "Max's tag." The circular object had a name engraved on it and a date from 3 years prior. Anna covered her mouth with her hands, recognizing the ID they had ordered when their family dog was still a puppy. What happened next left even the experienced judge speechless. The police dog, completely ignoring the silent commands from his handler, moved closer to Lena and gently pressed his snout against the medallion. He closed his eyes and inhaled deeply, as if the scent awakened memories that had been dormant for a very long time. A canine sigh, deep and almost human in its emotion, echoed through the room. Axel, or was it Max, seemed to recognize that object, that familiar scent from a distant past. Anna wrapped an arm around her daughter's shoulders, her initial doubts giving way to a fearful hope. The ongoing hearing was completely forgotten. At that moment, in the old courthouse of São Vicente, a truth was beginning to reveal itself, defying all odds and touching the hearts of everyone present. Officer Carlos Silva pulled firmly on the leash, trying to regain control of the situation. His years of training with police dogs had never prepared him for a moment like this. Axel, always the picture of obedience and discipline, was simply ignoring his commands, as if his handler's voice had been silenced by something more powerful. "Axel, heel," Carlos ordered, using the authoritative tone that had always worked, but the German shepherd remained motionless, his eyes fixed only on Lena. as if the rest of the world had vanished. The little girl, in turn, seemed to be in a trance, acting with a confidence that surprised even her mother. Lena extended her right hand and said with a clear voice, "Sit, pretty boy." It wasn't just the command itself, but the specific intonation, a slight pause between the words that Anna recognized immediately. It was exactly how Lena used to speak to Max, a secret code between the girl and her dog, something no one else could know or replicate. To the astonishment of everyone present, Axel immediately sat down, his back straight, chest puffed out, with the proud posture that trainers call the noble position. His eyes shone in a way Carlos had never seen before. It wasn't the alert gaze of a working dog, but something deeply emotional. From her high bench, Judge Maria Costa observed the scene with growing interest. Known throughout the São Vicente Forum for her inflexible demeanor and strict adherence to protocol, the magistrate now leaned forward, her reading glasses perched on the tip of her nose. "What is happening here?" she finally asked, her voice echoing through the silent courtroom. Anna hugged Lena protectively while the officer tried, unsuccessfully, to get the dog to return to his position by his side. "Your Honor, Carlos began, visibly embarrassed by his canine partner's breach of protocol. The judge raised a hand, cutting him off. "This hearing is temporarily suspended," she declared, striking her gavel with decision. "I want everyone involved in this situation in my chambers, immediately. Officer Silva, bring the animal. Mrs. Oliveira, come with your daughter." As people began to rise, murmuring among themselves, Judge Costa added, "And I want a clear explanation for what I have just witnessed. A police dog does not ignore his training without an exceptional reason." Lena smiled, clutching the medallion in her small hand. For her, there was no mystery at all, only the absolute certainty that against all odds, her Max had come home. Dr. Helena Ribeiro, a veterinarian attending her friend's hearing, discreetly approached the judge and whispered something in her ear. Her professional interest had been piqued by the unusual situation. "This could be more than a coincidence," the judge remarked, watching the interaction between the girl and the animal intently. "We need to check if there is any prior record of this dog before he joined the police force." Officer Silva swallowed hard. If Axel really was the girl's lost dog, how had he ended up in police training? The possibility of such a grave error in the system made him uneasy, and he worried about the consequences. For the next 3 days, Lena Oliveira couldn't sleep properly. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Axel's piercing gaze fixed on her, as if the animal were trying to say something only her child's heart could understand. At breakfast, lunch, and before bed, the 6-year-old talked incessantly about the police dog. "Mommy, I know it's him. It's Max. He recognized me," she would insist, clutching her old stuffed dog, Pip, as if he could confirm her certainty. Anna watched her daughter with a divided heart. On one hand, she feared fueling a hope that could end in another devastating disappointment. On the other, she had witnessed that inexplicable moment in court, when the animal had responded to the name her little girl had whispered. "Sweetie, we need to be patient," she would say, stroking her daughter's hair. "Even if he looks like Max, that dog belongs to the police now. He has an important job." Meanwhile, at the São Vicente Military Police Battalion, Officer Carlos Silva couldn't shake the unusual behavior of his canine partner. In 3 years working together, he had never seen Axel disobey a direct command or show such affection for a stranger. Driven by curiosity and a growing sense that something was amiss, the officer decided to investigate. One rainy afternoon, After his shift ended, Carlos descended into the kennel's archives, a small storeroom filled with dusty folders and records of every dog that had ever served the force. "I need to see Axel's file," he asked the clerk in charge, a middle-aged woman who knew every folder in that place. Leafing through the yellowed documents, the officer discovered something intriguing. Axel had been found wandering alone on a road between São Vicente and the neighboring town. Exactly 3 years ago. There was no collar, no microchip, no identification of any kind. The report only mentioned that the animal already showed signs of basic training, which had made his adaptation to the K-9 program easier. 3 years, Carlos murmured, remembering the age Lena had mentioned when she spoke of her dog's disappearance. The officer photographed the documents with his phone and kept searching. At the back of the folder, he found a small envelope labeled, "Items found with the animal." Inside, there was only a piece of worn, blue rope, the same color as the collar in an old photo Lena had shown in court. Carlos Silva felt a shiver run down his spine. The coincidence was too great to be ignored. Perhaps little Lena was right, after all. Lena Oliveira hadn't been able to sleep since the encounter in court. After 3 days of pleading, Ana finally agreed to take her to the São Vicente military police station. The little girl packed a small backpack with her precious treasures, a flash drive with home videos, and the worn-out toys that had belonged to Max. At the station, Officer Carlos Silva received them with a reserved smile. He had spent his nights researching similar cases and was beginning to question Axel's official story. "Can I show him something?" Lena asked, holding up the flash drive. The officer nodded, curious. In a small meeting room, they connected the device to a computer. Shaky images showed a younger Lena playing with Max in their backyard. Ana watched the scene with teary eyes, remembering the happiness the dog had brought into their lives. "Look, this is our secret code," the girl explained, pointing to the screen where her younger self was making specific gestures with her hands. In the video, Max responded with precise movements, sitting, rolling over, and playing dead in his own peculiar ways. Officer Silva called Axel into the room. The German shepherd entered, alert, but his eyes immediately fixed on Lena. "Can I try?" the girl asked. With permission, she stood up and repeated the exact same gestures from the video, moves that had never been taught to Axel during his police training. To everyone's astonishment, the dog responded perfectly, reproducing each command with absolute precision. When Lena made a circular motion with her index finger, Axel spun 3 times and lay down, exactly as Max did in the video. "My God," Carlos muttered in disbelief. "This is no coincidence." The news was leaked by an administrative employee who had witnessed the test. The next day, 3 local television station vans were parked at the battalion's entrance. The case of the little girl and the police dog went viral on social media, touching the entire city. Residents of Lena's neighborhood organized a vigil in front of the military police headquarters. Signs with phrases like, "Give Max back to Lena," and "Justice for the Oliveira family," appeared everywhere. An online petition had already gathered over 3,000 signatures. Ana, initially worried about the exposure, now saw hope in her daughter's eyes. For the first time in 3 years, Lena was smiling like she used to. Judge Maria Costa, who for 25 years had maintained a reputation for inflexibility in the São Vicente court, surprised everyone by yielding to the growing public pressure. After receiving dozens of letters and seeing the mobilization on social media, she finally authorized the collection of the police dog's DNA to verify if Axel was truly the missing Max. Helena Ribeiro, a renowned veterinarian in the city, was assigned to oversee the procedure. At the station, She prepared her equipment, explaining the process in a calm voice. We're going to collect a saliva sample and compare it with old fur from Max that you've kept. The result should be ready in a few days. Lena Oliveira watched everything with teary eyes, clutching her stuffed dog Pip to her chest. She remained in absolute silence, as if she feared any word might break the magic of the moment. When the veterinarian approached Axel with the cotton swab, the girl instinctively held her breath. "It's okay," whispered Officer Carlos Silva, noticing the child's tension. "He won't feel a thing." The officer, who had initially resisted the idea, now seemed as anxious as the family for the result. Ana Oliveira stood a few steps back, torn between hope and fear. As she watched her daughter, she remembered the tear-filled nights after Max's disappearance, the fruitless searches, and the posters scattered throughout the neighborhood. The mother feared this was all just a cruel coincidence that could shatter Lena's already fragile heart once more. "What if it's not him?" Anna asked Dr. Helena in a low voice, as the girl was distracted by petting the German shepherd. The veterinarian adjusted her glasses before replying, "Whatever the result, you'll have an answer. Sometimes, that's what we need to move on." After the sample was collected, Lena was allowed to spend a few minutes with the dog. Sitting on the cold floor of the station, she showed the old ID tag to Axel, who sniffed it for a long time. "You're coming home, aren't you?" she murmured, as the animal rested its head in her lap. On the way home, Anna glanced in the rearview mirror and saw her daughter asleep, still hugging Pip. Despite all her doubts, something inside her was beginning to believe in the impossible. Maybe it was the way the dog looked at Lena, or how he responded to the old commands. Now, all they could do was wait for science to confirm what the little girl's heart had known since their first meeting in court. While the city of São Vicente awaited the DNA test results, Officer Carlos Silva couldn't get the case out of his mind. After his shift, he would stay at the station, poring over old documents and training logs. It was in a yellowed folder, almost forgotten in the archives, that he found something intriguing about Axel. K-9 already exhibits basic and advanced commands. Origin unknown. Found without identification on the highway near Santos, read the initial intake report. The officer frowned. It was unusual for a dog with no formal training to respond so well to complex commands. Normally, the K-9 unit dogs underwent months of intensive preparation. "He already knew everything when he got here," Carlos murmured to himself, stroking the head of the German shepherd resting beside him. "Someone taught you before, didn't they?" The discovery strengthened the theory that Axel could indeed be Max, the Oliveira family's missing dog. The animal possessed skills that could only have come from prior training, possibly the very training Lena had given him during their years together. Meanwhile, Anna had obtained special permission for her daughter to visit the dog 3 times a week. The girl always arrived carrying one of Max's old toys, a worn-out ball, a rubber bone, a small bear missing an ear. With each visit, Axel seemed to recognize more of the objects, sniffing them at length and sometimes even playing as if he remembered. On one particularly emotional afternoon, Lena brought her phone with old videos. Dr. Helena Ribeiro, the veterinarian responsible for the case, carefully observed the animal's reactions as the child showed him the images. "Remember this song, Max?" the girl asked in a soft voice, playing a lullaby she used to sing to him before bed. Upon hearing the melody, the German shepherd tilted his head, as if trying to process a distant memory. His eyes fixed on Lena's. Slowly, he moved closer, laying his head in the girl's lap with a deep sigh, followed by a low whimper that echoed through the silent room. The veterinarian exchanged a meaningful glance with Carlos. That was not the common reaction of a trained police dog. It was the behavior of an animal that recognized a long-lost home. "He remembers," Lena whispered, tears in her eyes, as she stroked the dog's ears. "My Max always slept like this when I sang to him." Officer Silva felt a lump in his throat. With each passing day, it became harder to deny the special connection between the girl and the dog. Now only the DNA test could confirm what his heart already suspected. The story of Lena Oliveira and the police dog spread like wildfire throughout São Vicente. In less than a week, photos of their encounter in court went viral on social media, and the small coastal city was divided by heated opinions. In cafes, squares, and supermarket lines, the topic dominated conversations. "It's just a child missing her lost dog, seeing what she wants to see," argued the skeptics. A local school teacher even published an article explaining how the child's mind creates emotional connections to cope with loss. On the other side, a wave of support for the girl formed. "Did you see how the animal reacted? You can't teach that," defended the older residents of the neighborhood. Anna received daily messages from strangers sharing similar stories of improbable reunions. At the station, the atmosphere was tense. Commander Pereira called a closed-door meeting with his senior officers. Carlos Silva was summoned to the main room, where he found 5 high-ranking men discussing the case with grim expressions. "We need to transfer Axel to another state, maybe Minas Gerais," one of the captains proposed, slamming his hand on the table. "This circus is damaging the corporation's image. What if people start questioning where all our dogs come from?" Officer Silva's stomach sank. He knew the procedures well. Unidentified dogs were often incorporated into police training without many questions asked. How many others could have stories like Max's? "With all due respect, sir," Carlos replied, measuring every word. "Transferring the dog now would be an admission of guilt where there may be none." The commander adjusted his cap on the table. "Silva, you're too emotionally involved. This dog is state property, trained with public money. We can't just give him back because of a coincidence and a tearful child." Meanwhile, at the Oliveira family home, Lena slept, clutching her old stuffed dog, Pip, and the ID tag she had kept for 3 years. Anna watched her daughter from the doorway, torn between nurturing a hope that could end in devastation and protecting the girl from yet another loss. In the municipal park, an elderly woman was collecting signatures for a petition. She already had 300 names. On her phone, she showed a video where Axel could be seen clearly disobeying his handler's commands to respond to little Lena's call. The entire city held its breath, waiting for the answer to the same question. What would happen to the dog who served 2 masters? Carlos Silva could no longer sleep properly. Ever since he began investigating Axel's past, the officer found himself in an ever-deepening dilemma. Now, in the hallways of the station, the disapproving glares of his colleagues followed him like shadows. "Silva, you're putting your career at risk for a dog and a little girl," warned Sergeant Mendez, slamming the door to the meeting room. "That dog is state property. It cost thousands in training." The officer knew he was treading on dangerous ground. Rumors were circulating that he could be transferred to a remote district or even demoted. But every time he saw Axel react to Lena Oliveira's commands, he was certain he was doing the right thing. "It's not just a dog," he replied, his voice firm. "If he really is Max, we are facing an injustice that needs to be corrected." At home, Carlos spent hours reviewing the kennel's documents. How had Axel appeared exactly 3 years ago, with no microchip, yet with advanced basic training. Why had no one ever questioned his origin? Meanwhile, at the Oliveira residence, Lena hugged old Pip, her stuffed dog, imagining she was holding Max. Anna found her daughter crying silently in her room. What if they send him away, Mommy? What if I never see Max again? The woman sat beside the little girl, stroking her hair. How could she explain to a 6-year-old that the system didn't always work in favor of the most vulnerable? That sometimes, even when you're right, you can still lose. We're doing everything we can, my love, Anna said, hiding her own tears. That same night, Carlos received an official memo. He was forbidden from taking Axel for visits with the Oliveira family until further notice. The justification was to preserve the working animal's psychological well-being. The officer crumpled the paper in anger. He knew this was just the beginning of an attempt to keep the dog away from the girl, perhaps even to transfer him to another state before the DNA results came back. The next day, disobeying direct orders, he took Axel to the park where Lena usually played after school. When the animal saw the girl, he pulled on the leash with such force that he nearly knocked Carlos over. I promise I'll fight for you both, the officer whispered, watching the emotional reunion between the two. Even if it costs me my badge. For Lena, each day without knowing if she would see Max again was an eternity. For Carlos, each hour meant a new battle against the very system he had helped to build. The courtroom was silent as Lena Oliveira entered, her small steps echoing on the polished wooden floor. The 6-year-old held Max's ID tag tightly in one hand, and Pip, her stuffed dog, in the other. The special hearing had been called by Judge Maria Costa specifically to hear the little girl's testimony. You can sit here, dear, the judge said, pointing to a chair adapted for children. Axel, positioned beside Officer Carlos Silva, kept his eyes fixed on Lena, his ears twitching at her every movement. Anna watched from the front row, her heart a tight knot of worry and hope. She had never imagined seeing her daughter testify in a courtroom, much less over a dog. But this wasn't just any dog. This was Max, the best friend Lena had lost. Lena, can you tell us about Max? The judge asked, her voice gentle. The little girl took a deep breath, and her small voice gained strength with every word. She described teaching Max to offer his left paw whenever she said shooting star, a secret trick no one else knew. She spoke of how he always slept with his snout resting on her knee. And when he was happy, Lena continued, he would run in circles. And when I was sad, he would bring me pipe, even without me asking. As she spoke, she looked directly at Axel. The police dog, trained to remain impassive, let out a soft whimper when she mentioned the lullaby she used to sing him to sleep. Helena Ribeiro, present as an expert witness, jotted down notes on the animal's behavior. Axel's reactions defied every protocol of his police training. Can I show you something? Lena asked. After a nod from the judge, she made a small circular motion in the air with her fingers. Instantly, Axel lay down and rolled over, exactly as he did in the old home videos the family had submitted as evidence. A murmur swept through the room. Officer Silva stared in astonishment at his K-9 partner, who had never responded to that command during their training. Judge Maria Costa, known for her firm and impartial demeanor, discreetly brought a hand to her face to wipe away a single, stubborn tear. Years on the bench had not prepared her for the purity of that moment. He still remembers, Lena whispered, clutching a small dog tag to her chest. He's still my Max. In that instant, No one in the courtroom could deny the connection between the girl and the dog. The truth, more eloquent than any technical proof or formal testimony, shone in both of their eyes. The days crawled by as they awaited the DNA results. From the kitchen window, Ana Oliveira watched her daughter in the backyard. Lena filled every sheet of paper with drawings of a German shepherd, as if she could will Max into existence through her art. Ana realized something had shifted between them. Before the dog's reappearance, they rarely spoke of the past. Max's disappearance had become a forbidden topic, a wound neither of them knew how to heal. Now, every evening, mother and daughter pored over old photo albums, sharing stories of the dog. "Remember when Max ate your 4th birthday cake?" Ana asked, sitting beside her on the sofa. Lena smiled, her eyes bright with the memory. "And when he ran into the living room, all wet from the rain?" These conversations slowly rebuilt an intimacy that had been lost. Ana felt she could finally offer her daughter more than just protection. She could offer her hope. One night, Ana found the courage to ask the question she had avoided for years. "How did you know it was him, sweetie? After all this time?" Lena looked down at Pipe, the stuffed dog in her lap, before answering. "The way he looked at me, Mom. His eyes never changed." Meanwhile, at the military police battalion, Officer Carlos Silva spent his evenings reviewing files. He sifted through Axel's training documents, searching for inconsistencies. He and the dog had been partners for 2 years. Together, they had participated in major operations, saved lives. Carlos stroked the German shepherd's head as the dog rested beside his desk. "What am I supposed to do, partner?" he whispered. The dog's ears perked up, attentive, as if he understood his handler's dilemma. Later that night, the officer drove to an empty park and unclipped Axel's leash, watching him run free. He remembered the look on Lena Oliveira's face, the pure belief in her eyes when she called the dog by his old name. For the first time in his career, Carlos questioned whether protocol was more important than the truth. As he got back into his vehicle, he made a decision. If the results confirmed Axel was indeed Max, he would not stand in their way. Sometimes, he thought, true loyalty meant knowing when to let go. That week, both Ana and Carlos discovered that true love sometimes demands sacrifice, and that justice isn't always written in law books. The investigation took a new turn when Mariana Santos, a former neighbor, contacted Ana after seeing the story on the local news. Sitting in the Oliveras' modest living room, the woman trembled as she recounted what she had witnessed 3 years earlier. "I saw 2 men put a German shepherd into a dark vehicle, right on the corner of our street. The dog seemed scared, but it wasn't barking," Mariana explained. Lena clutched Pipe to her chest, her tear-filled eyes fixed on the visitor. Ana immediately called Officer Carlos Silva, who arrived at the house still in uniform. He listened intently to the testimony, taking detailed notes. The officer, now personally invested in the case, explained that the theft of purebred animals was not uncommon in the area. "There are specialized rings that steal purebred dogs for resale," he explained, as little Lena hung on his every word. "German shepherds are frequent targets because of their market value." The next day, Carlos presented the case to his superior, Roberto Mendes, who authorized a parallel investigation. Old photos of Max were cross-referenced with similar incidents over the past 3 years. "We found at least 7 cases of stolen German shepherds within a 50-kilometer radius," the delegate reported, spreading documents across his desk. "All with the same pattern. Animals taken during the day, no forced entry. They were likely watching the families." Dr. Helena Ribeiro, brought in for consultation, confirmed that Max, now Axel, showed signs of post-traumatic stress, typical of animals rescued from abusive situations. It's possible he underwent forced training before being abandoned or escaping, she explained. For Lena, each new piece of information was like a puzzle piece falling into place. During an authorized visit to the battalion, she sat beside the dog and whispered in his ear, "I knew you didn't run away on purpose." Anna watched her daughter with an aching heart, torn between rising hope and the fear of a devastating disappointment. Officer Silva, for his part, reviewed the police kennel's files with new eyes. The official story, that Axel had been found abandoned, was beginning to sound increasingly suspicious. Perhaps the dog hadn't simply gotten lost. Perhaps he had escaped and had been trying to find his way home all along. Dr. Helena Ribeiro walked into the courtroom holding a sealed envelope. A profound silence fell over the room as she approached Judge Maria Costa's bench. Everyone present, officers, court staff, and especially Lena and Anna in the front row, seemed to be holding their breath. "The results are conclusive," the veterinarian announced, adjusting her glasses as she handed the document to the magistrate. "The DNA confirms with 100% certainty Axel and Max are the same animal." A collective gasp swept through the court. The judge, normally so composed, let a look of sheer astonishment cross her face. She glanced at Lena, then at Officer Silva, and finally back at the document in her hands. "This court officially confirms," she declared, her voice thick with restrained emotion, "that the K-9 unit dog known as Axel is, in fact, Max Oliveira, a pet missing for the last 3 years." Anna wrapped her arms around her daughter, who was trembling from head to toe. Silent tears streamed down Lena's face as she absorbed the news she had waited so long to hear. "I knew it," she whispered, clutching the old dog tag. "I always knew." Officer Silva, visibly moved, unclipped the dog's leash. As if understanding everything, the dog looked once at his handler, then at Lena, and in a heartbeat, crossed the distance between them. He leaped into the girl's lap with an energy that startled everyone, licking her face frantically and whining with joy as she hugged him, sobbing. Even seasoned police officers turned away to hide their emotion. The judge watched the scene, her eyes glistening. This was not just an unusual legal case. It was a moment of justice that transcended codes and statutes. "What happens now?" Anna asked, her voice trembling as she held both her daughter and their long-lost dog. The question hung in the air. Max was at once a valuable public asset and a lost member of a family. The battle for his custody was only just beginning. The joy of the reunion quickly gave way to a complex reality. Max was now Axel, an asset of the military police, a highly trained dog valued at thousands of dollars and an essential part of the K-9 unit. According to public property law, police service animals cannot simply be transferred to private citizens, the battalion commander explained during a tense meeting with Officer Silva. Carlos ran a hand over his weary face. He had witnessed Axel's transformation from the moment he first saw Lena. The once disciplined dog now whined every time the girl left after her authorized visits. "But there's no precedent for this," Carlos argued. "We've never had a case where a service dog was proven to have been stolen from a family before joining the force." Judge Maria Costa surprised everyone by convening an extraordinary hearing. The case had touched something deep within her. "The law exists to serve people," she declared, "not the other way around." On the day of the hearing, the old courthouse was packed. Dozens of residents stood on the courthouse steps, holding colorful signs that read, "Max belongs with Lena," and justice for two hearts. Anna held her daughter's hand tightly, feeling both anxious and comforted by the wave of support. Lena, who seemed to have aged years in a matter of weeks, walked into the courtroom clutching pipe to her chest, a silent message for the judge. At the entrance, Officer Silva deposited boxes overflowing with letters and drawings sent to the court from children across the region. "We must also consider the animals' well-being," Dr. Ribeiro argued during her testimony, presenting studies on the emotional impact of separating dogs from their original families. Officer Silva, now a silent advocate for the family, stood beside Max, who never took his eyes off Lena. The dog was more alive now, more joyful, as if a dormant part of him had finally reawakened. When it was time for Anna and Lena to speak, a hush fell over the room. Judge Maria Costa looked directly at the little girl, as if seeking in those innocent eyes the answer to a dilemma that no law book could resolve. It was Lena's teacher who spoke, describing how the little girl had transformed since their reunion, rediscovering the joy and confidence that had vanished along with her dog 3 years prior. Judge Maria Costa observed it all, deeply moved by the spontaneous show of support and the little girl's unyielding perseverance. After hearing all the testimony, the judge called for silence and announced that she would need 48 hours to reflect on the unprecedented case. "I must consider not only the cold letter of the law," she declared, looking directly at Lena, "but also the spirit of justice that must guide our decisions." As they left the courthouse, mother and daughter walked hand in hand, surrounded by a circle of supporters. The wait would be agonizing, but for the first time in a long while, hope felt stronger than fear. The afternoons in São Vicente soon fell into a new ritual. With light steps, Lena Oliveira would cross the courtyard of the military police battalion, always carrying a toy or a treat for Max. Thanks to Judge Maria Costa's official authorization, the girl could now visit her friend every day while they awaited the final decision. Max, still called Axel by the officers, seemed to live in two worlds. During training drills, he maintained the disciplined posture that made him an excellent police dog. But the moment he heard Lena's voice, his eyes would shine with a different light, his tail wagging uncontrollably. "He still remembers all our games," the little girl remarked to Officer Carlos Silva as she watched the German shepherd fetch a ball she had thrown. "Even hide and seek in the park." The officer smiled, but his smile was tinged with melancholy. In recent days, he had noticed how his canine partner would stare at the battalion gate as Lena left, how restless he became at night, as if missing something or someone. "You know, Lena," Carlos said, crouching down to her level, "I don't think he ever forgot you. Even when he was with me on operations, I think a part of him was always searching for the way back home." Ana Oliveira watched the scene from a distance, her heart aching. She feared her daughter would suffer all over again if the decision was not in their favor. But seeing Lena smile again, after so long, made it all worthwhile. One particularly sunny afternoon, Carlos called mother and daughter aside for a private conversation. Seated on a bench beneath a leafy tree, with Max resting at Lena's feet, the officer revealed his decision. "I promise you," he declared with conviction, "I will do everything in my power to ensure you two are never separated again, even if it means giving up my partner." The little girl's eyes filled with tears. "But you love him so much," she whispered. "I do," the officer confirmed. "But he's yours, Lena. He always has been. And sometimes, loving someone means letting them go where they belong." Max lifted his head, as if understanding every word. He rested his muzzle on the girl's lap, and then licked Carlos's hand, as if in gratitude. Anna embraced the officer, at a loss for words to express her thanks. His promise was more than a gesture of kindness. It was an acknowledgement that bonds of love, even between a child and her dog, deserved to be honored above any regulation. The São Vicente courthouse had never been so crowded. People squeezed into the hallways, some even peering through the windows. Lena Oliveira held her mother's hand tightly, while the German shepherd stood guard beside Officer Carlos Silva, restless as if sensing the historic moment. Judge Maria Costa entered the room with a steady, deliberate gait. The silence was immediate. She adjusted her glasses and looked at everyone present, her gaze lingering on Lena and the dog. For a fleeting instant, her usual sternness gave way to a restrained smile. "This case challenges us to think beyond the written law," the magistrate began. "We have an animal who serves society with excellence as a police dog, but who also belongs, by right and by affection, to a family." Anna squeezed her daughter's hand. Officer Silva remained in a formal stance, but his tension was palpable. Dr. Helena Ribeiro, who had conducted the DNA test, observed everything with both scientific and human interest. Considering the well-being of the animal, the proven bond with Lena Oliveira, and the service rendered to the community, the judge announced, "I hereby decree shared custody of Max, formerly known only as Axel. He will spend 3 days a week with the Oliveira family and 4 days at the battalion, with adjustments to be made during special operations." A murmur rippled through the room, followed by spontaneous applause. Lena let go of her mother's hand and ran towards the dog, who leaped to meet her, knocking off Officer Silva's cap in the process. "Max, we're going home!" the girl exclaimed through tears of joy, wrapping her arms around the dog's neck. Anna approached the judge, her own eyes glistening. "Thank you for giving my daughter her hope back," she said, her voice thick with emotion. The magistrate nodded, visibly moved. The law exists to serve justice, and today, justice served the heart. The officer joined them, extending a hand to Anna. "I promise to take good care of him on his workdays," he assured her, "and Lena can visit the battalion whenever she likes." Photographers captured the historic moment as neighbors and supporters embraced. An elderly woman remarked that in 50 years of coming to that courthouse, she had never seen anything like it. And while everyone celebrated, Max seemed the calmest of all, lying at Lena's feet, as if he had finally found his place in the world, divided between duty and love, but at last, complete. Judge Maria Costa's ruling would enter the national legal record as a precedent of humanity in cases involving service animals. But for Lena, it meant only one thing. Her best friend was finally coming home. In the months that followed, Lena Oliveira's life found a new rhythm. Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, along with the weekends, were sacred. Max would come home bringing with him the joy that had been absent for 3 long years. The girl regained not only her companion, but also the confidence that had seemed lost forever. At the São Vicente Municipal Park, the two became a familiar sight. Lena would run with the German shepherd across the lawns, teaching him new tricks that blended police commands with their old, familiar games. The dog seemed to live in 2 perfectly balanced worlds. One moment, a hero of public safety. The next, simply the best friend of a 6-year-old girl. Anna watched her daughter's transformation with quiet tears. The mother who once feared to nurture impossible hopes now saw their story as a symbol of perseverance. "Some battles must be fought," she would tell the other mothers in the neighborhood. even when they seem lost. At the battalion on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, Max, still called Axel by his uniformed colleagues, continued his work with excellence. Far from losing his edge, the dog seemed even more motivated. Officer Carlos Silva noticed how he returned happier after his days with Lena, as if the division between duty and family had somehow made him whole. Their story transcended the borders of São Vicente. Journalists from all over Brazil visited the city to document the case. Dr. Helena Ribeiro, responsible for the DNA test, began giving lectures on animal rights at veterinary and law schools. When Lena turned 7, her birthday party was held at the battalion, uniting Max's two worlds. Police officers, neighbors, the judge, and even reporters sang happy birthday, while the dog, wearing a makeshift party hat, rested proudly beside the girl. Officer Silva became part of the Oliveira family. On Sundays, he was often found drinking coffee on the porch with Anna, while Lena and Max played in the yard. The friendship born from adversity had blossomed into something deeper, weaving new bonds between people brought together by fate. And so, in that small coastal town, a simple phrase whispered by a child in a courtroom, "It's Max," had transformed not just individual lives, but the very notion of justice itself. As the afternoon sun streamed through the windows of the Oliveira home, illuminating a man, a woman, a child, and a dog, particles of hope danced in the air, a reminder to all that sometimes all it takes is to believe.